it play and call it work.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Luka Lore, Chapter 1, which will be the first season, where we focus on not Phoenix Rising, but Psychic Awakening as a whole book series. And this is going to be Episode 2, which is the second part to Phoenix Rising, which is the first book in Psychic Awakening, giving you an idea of what's going on in the show. Now, I've taken a lot of your feedback. I've read your comments. Now, I've already recorded most of the audio for this before the first video went out, so a lot of that isn't going to change. Essentially what the show is I read modern narrative books and I summarize them and I try to consolidate them into a little bundle of information that I can just kind of throw at you, and you can just listen to me explain what's going on in these books. It saves you the time and money, I suppose, of going out and buying the books, and it sort of keeps you up narratively with what's going on. Now, Phoenix Rising takes place not up to date 40k era. I will go into detail about that shortly, because one of the suggestions or requests were timelines, and I can certainly do that for you. I guess I'll do that right now. I haven't really integrated into the video yet. I'll figure out how to do that sometime when I have more time with Cullen, though he is a very busy bee, as you can imagine. I'm also thinking about changing the name, or I was thinking about changing the name to Luka's Lorehammer, or something along those lines, and that is thank you to Zombie Dad and YouTube for that idea. I caught the comment. The comment caught my eye, and I really enjoyed it. So I might consider that, but might keep it with Luka Lore because it's already been named that, and keep it consistent as well. That was Matt's idea because I couldn't think of a name, and I'm bad at picking names, so I have no real complaints. Right? It was given to me, and I will accept it.
Like watching our videos? Consider becoming a Vault member, signing up for a 7-day free trial to the Vault so that you can see more of our videos, and specifically the Resident Evil narrative campaign experience.
Resident Evil.
Click on that link below. These are some shots from the campaign. It's pretty awesome. It's a custom campaign. It's Warhammer 40k Resident Evil, and you're gonna love it! Especially if you love zombies, especially if you love role-playing, especially if you love all of the weirdness that accompanies all of that. This campaign is exclusive to the MiniWarGaming Vault, so you'll need to sign up for a Vault membership. And the Vault members actually help to support us. They make it possible for us to do what we do and make the videos, so thank you very much to all of you who are Vault members. And if you've ever considered it in the past, well, this is a perfect opportunity to do it right now.
But anyways, I digress. To the show and to your suggestions. One of them being timelines. I'll be honest, great idea, never thought of it. So thank you to all the people who requested timelines. I can easily do that for you. I am going to go ahead and just go over that now as opposed to later in the video so you can get an idea of what's going on. Now, I'm going to, I guess, draw a picture for you. So, circa end of 7th edition. The timeline for 40k was pretty much always at 999M41, which is a fancy way of saying the year 41,999. Games Workshop did not want to click it over to 42,000, but they decided to with 8th edition. Now, what happened quickly was Gathering Storms. This is where Abaddon destroys Cadia. It's the big crusade. Guilliman is awoken and is essentially the leader of the Imperium, or enacted or standing leader of the Imperium, first among equals. You know, good old title there. With the help of Yvraine, there's an alliance between the Ynnari and the Imperium. Guilliman awakens, and immediately there is conflict over Terra. The forces of Khorne invade, but they're able to fight them off. Khorne gets angry, destroys those bloodthirsters, all that good stuff. Now, what happens from here is the Indominus Crusade and the forming of the Cicatrix Maledictum. And this jumps into the Indominus era, which is the current era we're in for Warhammer 40k, which is, it's been lasting the last 120 years or so. So it's, I guess in the scale of 40k, not really that long at all, but I mean, 120 years for us is a pretty long time considering. The Indominus Crusade happens. And to give you an idea of the events, some of the events of the Indominus Crusade, one of them was the War of the Beast, which is the Vigilus campaign book that came out in 8th edition, earlier this edition. And this covered all the events on the planet Vigilus and that whole system. Now, the year that this took place in, if anyone is curious, is, I believe, 001 M42, so the year 42,001. And this war was a 24-year-long war, so it ended in 42,025. I keep wanting to go back and forth between the way 40GW does it. I kind of like the way they do it. They go the last 3 digits and then the thousands of years. So they'll be like 025 M42 instead of like 42,025. I'm not too sure why they do that, but they do. But to get back on track, the events of Phoenix Rising particularly take place during the Indominus Crusade, early in the Indominus Crusade. It's not like it's a 5-year event either. The events of Phoenix Rising take place over, I got to imagine, a few decades at least. It doesn't go into great detail about how long it takes. It doesn't quite tell you, but it starts in Gathering Storms, and then it continues on into the Indominus Crusade. So a lot of the events of Psychic Awakening, the awakening of the Incarn, the sundering of craftworlds, all the arguing and all the infighting of the Aeldari or the Asuryani, this all takes place during Gathering Storms and the beginning of the Indominus Crusade. So I'll give you a random year. It goes between the year of 41,999 between 42,111, which is the current updated year for Warhammer 40k, as far as I know, regarding narrative stuff, which is the Blight War. After the Indominus Crusade, Guilliman then went to go reinforce Ultramar because Mortarion and his Death Guard were pushing in and trying to expand their reach in the Milky Way galaxy. And that's pretty much it. So you have this gap of 112, 113 potential years that this takes place over. Now, I know it's not perfect, but in the grand scheme of 40k, it's actually kind of a sliver, so it is a pretty pinpoint time period, technically. But I guess we can get on with the show and continue from where we left off. If you don't know where that is, I ask you, please go to Luka Lore Episode 1 and check that video out to get caught up.
It was upon the dead world of Trekkie where Helbane made her first attempt upon the prophet's life. Luckily for Yvraine, she doesn't travel alone, and she was in the company of a formidable Bael'tan warhost. Yvraine and her forces from Bael'tan were on Trekkie as a means to get to their next destination between webway portals, and Shalaxi decided that this was probably the best time to strike. Now, unfortunately for the Aeldari forces, due to the narrow nature of the paths they were taking to get to the next webway portal, they weren't able to really fit any grav transports. So, to push through this ambush, they'd have to do it on foot. Now, this was a perfectly planned ambush, though the one thing Helbane didn't quite expect was the fanatical nature of the Aeldari and the lengths they were willing to go to protect the Prophet's life. Now, during the fighting, Yvraine was being personally protected by a group of Howling Banshees, and together they were cutting their way through the Slaanesh forces, trying to make their way to the webway portal to make their escape. This was only made possible due to the sacrifice of the Bael'tan forces as they threw their lives away trying to buy Yvraine time in any way, shape, or form that they could. Now, what happened next was unexpected. The souls of the perished Aeldari on the battlefield that sacrificed their lives were being funneled into Yvraine, gifting her with speed and strength enough to outpace and outmatch the Slaanesh forces on her heel, and eventually make her way to the webway portal where she made her escape along with nearby Aeldari. Unfortunately, the remaining Bael'tan forces were completely destroyed, but their sacrifice was not in vain. The prophetess did escape. This leaves Shalaxi Helbane in a seething rage. Their quarry escaped, another embarrassing failure in Slaanesh's eyes. Though, this would not be the end. Shalaxi would not be denied forever, and the hunt would continue. Now the book goes into a time jump, and it covers the events afterwards, and what's going on with the major craft worlds, the Drukhari and the Harlequins. Some examples would be Craft World Ally Talk, focusing on their own plight, still considers the Necrontyr, also known as the Necrons, to be the major threat to the galaxy above anything else. Working together with the Harlequins of the Frozen Star Mask, they're attempting to wipe out the Hyrek dynasty, which is just waking up. Of course, a major threat, though. This makes sense. Ironically, though, they are ambushed by the forces of Slaanesh while they're at their weakest during the fighting with the Necrons. Things work out for them. They fight off both the Slaanesh threat with reconnaissance and subterfuge, cloak and dagger stuff, classic Ally Talk stuff. This does end up showing the craft world that maybe the forces of chaos are a bigger threat than they once thought, especially with the Cicatrix Maledictum. Now for craft world Bael'tan, things have fundamentally changed since the destruction of their infinity circuits and the creation of the Incarn. Not much of a craft world anymore. It has since broken up into its constituent parts and represents more of a large fleet than a single world ship. Still suffering from the division that the Ynnari had brought upon them earlier, they are closer to the brink of civil war. Luckily, a nearby Exodite system was attacked by the forces of chaos, if you want to call it lucky, and this was enough to galvanize the efforts of the craftworld Beltan to organize and work together to fight off that threat and help out their brothers. Something important to note, joining in this fight were 3 of the legendary Phoenix Lords, Baharath, Fuegan, and Karandis, which was both good and bad. Obviously, the Chaos forces didn't quite stand a chance against this combined assault, though it's pretty close to the most unfortunate prophecy, the Ranadandra, which is the final fight against Chaos that would destroy all things. Now, for that prophecy to come true, though, you need all the legendary Phoenix Lords fighting. This wasn't quite there. Things are still fine. Meanwhile, Craftworld Ulthwé is focusing on the defense against Chaos, knowing themselves to be resolute in the face of such a threat, uncertain of humanity though. They decide to take this time to assassinate any corrupt officials or governors or any type of human leadership that would get in the way of defending against a Chaos incursion and making sure that any replacements would be resolute. Craftworld Ulthwé is caught red-handed in a couple of situations, and they're seen as regicidal maniacs by the humans, and they're never truly appreciated for all the lives that were saved in the name of the greater good. Now onto the juicier stories of both Craftworld Saim-Hann and Yndari, as they have direct contact with the Ynnari and Yvraine. Starting off with Saim-Hann, they've pretty much been in constant conflict with Chaos since the coming of the Great Rift. Following the arrival of Yvraine, she had found a lot of success when it came to recruiting from this craftworld, which was a pleasant surprise. Though eventually it risked a schism amongst the Siriani of Saim-Hann, much like Beltan. A summit was called between the spiritual leaders of the craftworld and the Ynnari to figure out how to resolve this. Though surprisingly, a force of Drukhari emerged from a forgotten webway portal with the intent of taking Yvraine's life. Luckily for Yvraine, the legendary Phoenix Lord Jane Zara was there to help protect her. Now for Yndari, there was a stint where they had rushed off to Macragge to help out the Ultramarines and Guilliman with a chaos threat. Now this cost them dearly. Things aren't looking so great for this craftworld. In fact, they're looking dire. They've lost much more than the other craftworlds through constant conflict. Things get particularly worse when a Keeper of Secrets, leading a Slaaneshi host, is able to break open a rift right in the middle of one of the craftworld's biodomes. They weren't able to push back this incursion. In fact, the demons themselves were winning and pushing deeper and deeper into the craftworld's heart towards the circuits and killing a lot of the inhabitants. That was until assistance from nearby craftworlds and Harlequin masks were able to come by and eradicate the demons, thus saving Craftworld Yndari, but leaving a scar on their pride. And then Yvraine arrives with her Ynnari creed, and it's almost immediately spurned. During deliberations between the factions, the craftworld is unfortunately attacked yet again by chaos, this time an entire fleet. Led by the Nurgle demon prince Gara Gulgulgor, Yvraine jumps at the opportunity to show that the Ynnari are in it for all Aeldari, and she commissions her Corsair fleet to intercept the Nurgle fleet. With the assistance of Yvraine's Corsairs, the craftworld is able to repel the attack. Prince Uriel of Yndari then leads a counterattack against the enemy flagship, the Spawn of Oganothir. Though successful in crippling the enemy flagship, Prince Uriel suffers a mortal wound at the hands of the enemy demon prince, enough so that it kills him. Prince Uriel in fact dies in this conflict. Back on the craftworld after the fight, the Angel of Yndari saw virtue in Yvraine's creed and allowed her into Uriel's tomb where he rested. There, the priestess was able to actually burn out the plague that corrupted his body and give him life anew. This event swayed much of the population's opinion of the Ynnari in their favor, and many at this point then agreed to join, which then caused a lot of turmoil amongst itself, much like the other craftworlds. With most of the Assyriani covered, let's move over to the Drukhari and Harlequins and see where they stand on all of this. We'll start with the Drukhari and where it all began. When the fragment of the God of the Dead created by Eldrad sought out Yvraine, well, she was right in the middle of a gladiatorial arena match in the Crucible Arena on Camorra. The creation of Yvraine led to a metaphysical invasion that allowed demons to spill into Vex City. Now, this is unheard of. Yvraine was able to escape through the confusion and chaos of this incursion, and it was eventually isolated, not completely stopped, though at great cost, and this was an insult that Vect could not ignore. Vect didn't want to go directly after the Ynnari for these events. He didn't want to recognize them as a threat, though he did try to sway his people against their creed through the usual Drukhari intrigue. Though that didn't stop a lot of the Drukhari from joining the Ynnari eventually, though many of them just used it as an excuse to attack hated enemies out in the open, saying that they didn't follow the same beliefs and things like that. More or less just another reason for the Drukhari to continue fighting each other. Many of the pro-Ynnari amongst the Drukhari became their own separatist factions in their own right. At this point, Vect is none too happy, though he still doesn't want to recognize the Ynnari as a threat. With scheming, plots employees, cloak and dagger stuff, and third-party brokers, he invests in many hunting parties. The deadliest party is led by the legendary assassin Drukhari, and this was the attack that took place during the meetings on the craftworld Saim-Hann. Luckily for Yvraine, this is also where Jane Zar was to protect her. At this point, Jane Zar had already pledged her power to the Ynnari and to protecting Yvraine. During the fight with Drukhari, it was obvious he was a much more skilled combatant. Though gifted with the power of the Ynyad, Jane Zar was able to fend him off and ultimately fight back the Drukhari assault. Failing that, there's still a hefty bounty on Yvraine's head. Moving on to the last faction of the three, the Harlequins. A lot of the same political intrigues going on, as well as the Asuryani, nothing as dramatic as the Drukhari. The Harlequins here, they believe in their own path. They focus on things they consider to be more important or a larger threat than chaos in general. And much like the Asuryani and the Drukhari, some of them just throw in with the Ynnari as well. They believe in their path as the most important path, the true righteous path. Though more insight as to what's going on with Yvraine right now, she's currently plagued by visions of this keeper of secrets that she encountered long ago on Trekkie. These visions see everyone around her cut down and destroyed, including the Ynnari. Then eventually herself, her body crumbling to ash and her soul swallowed whole by she who thirsts. A terrifying end for what she represents. Though there was still hope, there were dreams of combined Asuryani, Drukhari, and Harlequin forces to stand up against these demons that hunted them. It was clear that a combined Aeldari force was needed, and Yvraine was close. She had already collected many Asuryani and Drukhari, including the recent agent Lilith Hesperex, who was convinced to join with the promise of eternal puissance, though the last remaining puzzle piece were the solitaires of the Harlequins. Though a chance meeting with an odd pair might offer up that opportunity. A handsome Aeldari with 2 long blades on his back, and a human female in black power armor whose hair was a shock of white. The latter had a psychic aura so powerful it stung the mind, requested help. They explained a prophecy of a fresh cataclysm to come, as well as a hidden foe and force that would turn stars and souls bleak. Very cryptic, very doomsday-y. Yvraine agreed to offer aid in the future when it would be needed in exchange for the Aeldari here to help her track down a certain Harlequin solitaire she's been looking for. Now this mysterious Aeldari, being a former member of a mask, an exile I should mention, it's no real problem. He simply has to go back and get in contact with those he once knew, and that's what these two do. They disappear into the twilight and eventually come back with the support of the solitaires of at least one mask. Now, that just means Yvraine has to hold up her end of the bargain, but that isn't something she needs to worry about right now. She has bigger things on the mind. Yvraine knew she would be facing Shalaxi shortly. Every iota of her focus went into mustering her forces for a war at an old haunt of hers, back when she was a Corsair Queen, a planet known as the Athglass. So they went through storms and tribulations, thought caused by Slaanesh, which in the end, all it did was further push their determination to make it to their goal. Eventually, they arrive. The Athglass was a paradise world in orbit around the reddish star Miagu. Again, Yvraine used this planet as a safe haven to hide from her enemies, back when she was the Corsair Queen known as Amharok. The Athglass was also home to a central world shrine that acted as a loose geomantic equivalent of an infinity circuit that you'd find on an Asuryani craft world, making this planet more of a natural craft world. all the more reason for it to draw the attention of Slaanesh. The planet is also home to Aeldari Exodites, which Yvraine made haste to, asking for their aid in the fight to come. Though she befriended them in times past, they had to refuse her now, though they promised they wouldn't interfere with her plans, which, great. Regardless, over the next few months, the messengers that Yvraine had sent out with a call to arms slowly trickled in with those who would answer. Many Aeldari came of their own volition as well, their Farseers reading the skeins of fate and sending forces to represent them, or simply arriving themselves to assist. Many leaders of the different Aeldari factions arrived eventually and immediately started to argue and bicker amongst themselves about how this conflict should progress, who's going to command, who knows what they're talking about, who should defend what areas, etc. Though Yvraine expected this, and eventually they would listen to her and her commands, and would let the actions of the coming events show the leaders the outcome of their combined strength and what can happen when the Aeldari work together as one unified force. Tense, but ready, Yvraine waited for fate to take its course, which it did on the 6th hour of the 6th day of the 6th month since her and her force's arrival. Word reached the main encampment from the mouth of an Exodite scout of the demonic invasion force that emerged from a giant rift near the planet's equator. The combined forces of the Ynnari and Drukhari stationed there were no match. They were slaughtered by the demonic incursion, and the skies grew dark. The wind rose to a bone-chilling shriek, and suddenly, a rain of sickly sweet fluid pelted down, robbing visibility as the squall lashed the forest inside and out. Then amongst the trees, a flicker of purple light flared, and the demon known as Hellbane strode from the verdant wilderness. Hellbane advanced alone into the clearing, like a great predator, though the very visions that Yvraine had been tormented by for so long finally proved worth enduring. She had seen this moment many times, and knew exactly what came next. Yvraine had already put orders in place for a coordinated response. Aeldari forces attacked from all angles, slamming headlong into surprise packs of Slaaneshi demons that had been about to spring forth in ambush. Ruby lances of laser fire stabbed down from the Corsair fleet in orbit to tear blazing holes in the forest canopy and annihilate more of the unnatural invaders. The demons' numbers were great, however, and they delighted in agony and risk as much as they thrilled at bloodshed and victory. Undeterred, Hellbane's vastly swollen hunting party fought back. Vicious gunfights, running skirmishes, and lightning-fast duels erupted all along the tree line around the clearing. Meanwhile, 5 champions ran to meet the demon, 5 souls burning bright against the living furnace of dark energy. Lilith Hesperex sprinted towards Hellbane with jaw-dropping speeds, knives bared, teeth glinting in a cruel smile. Yvraine and the Vizarch followed close behind, prone swords drawn. Behind Hellbane, the Solitaire somersaulted from the canopy in a blur of glimmering diamonds, whilst James-R charged front and center, her war shout rising. The fight that ensued was the stuff of legend. Hellbane was isolated from the wider demon horde by the determined battle lines of Aeldari, who braved annihilation to launch one tactical riposte after another amidst the rain of Corsair fire. No other race could have dared such a precise and potentially disastrous style of warfare. Fighting in concert and perfect synchronicity, the Ynnari, Drukhari, and Harlequins wove a dance of death between the searing energy columns that fell from the heavens and gutted every demonic assault before it could break through the Aeldari lines. The fate of the conflict would be decided by the duel between Hellbane and Yvraine's champions. And that's it, folks. They leave it on a cliffhanger. Sort of. These events take place before modern 40k narrative, before the Blight War, all of that. So it's safe to assume that they won, and that Yvraine and her champions went on to continue the agenda of the Ynnari, and that Hellbane is a failure, and is now being punished by Slaanesh, most likely. Or perhaps something else incredibly dramatic happened that has yet to be written about or known, though that would be interesting. And that is where it ends.
What does it all mean? I don't actually know. We might have to wait to find out for more Psychic Awakening books to be released. I like to imagine that they're all somehow connected, because I've read ahead on a few of them, and it just seems like, I'll be honest, at first it seems like a lot of inconsequential narrative that just gives relevant rules for armies that they're looking to release new rules for. And I mean, that's cool and all, but they're promising something big here. Now, Games Workshop often does this. You know, they often promise something big and extravagant, but narratively, that is, but sometimes it falls short. Now, this is due, in fact, because Warhammer 40k is a massive universe, and I understand why it would be risky to stir the pot, right? Change up the narrative. So I don't blame them in any way, shape, or form. But I have my own suspicions for the end of the series, and I would love to see them come true. Now, next episode of the series will be Faith and Fury. Now, I think I can make this one into one episode because I recall it not having as much as Phoenix Rising did, because Phoenix Rising also had a lot of just generic Eldar backstory, whereas Faith and Fury just focuses more on a conflict in a very specific system, very near Terra and the Sol system. So stay tuned for that. Not too sure when that will be coming out. This will be, of course, coming out on a Thursday, albeit it might be 1 to 3 weeks away. Probably not any more than that, though. You're probably going to be getting 1 or 2 Luka lores a month, as far as I know, because I am also very busy with recording 40k and Age of Sigmar and just a bunch of other games in general. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Please leave some feedback down below, boop, 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 where I will be reading those, every single comment, responding to ones I feel like I need to. And I'll take it all into consideration when I go and record episode 3 of chapter 1. As always, hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Happy wargaming.